Hey everybody, as you may know, February is Black History Month here in the United States. A few of you have reached out to me and asked me to do a video where I recommend a few books for your Black History Month TBR. So I'm going to recommend 5 books today that you should read no matter what because they are freaking fantastic. So let's get started. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? I hope you guys are doing very, very well. As always, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're happy, I hope you're safe, and I hope you're getting some good reading in. It has been sort of crazy weather across the United States. I hope you guys are either not too warm or not too cold. I know that there's a snow front going through parts of the United States, so I hope you guys are staying roasty toasty. I am here today to make some recommendations for Black History Month. Now, I wasn't originally going to do this video, but a few people reached out to me and asked me for some recommendations. So I thought what I would do is I just walk through my shelf and really pick some books that just spoke to me, books that I absolutely love and sort of fit this sort of TBR. However, I will say these books are fantastic and you should read them, all of them, no matter when, because they really are that good. So get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, get out however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, please order a book or two from your local independent bookstore. They can always use our help. If you are a library user, I recommend getting these on your library request list as soon as possible because I'm telling you, you're going to want to read all 5 of these. So what I've decided to do is go in order of publication, starting with the earliest and going to the newest. So, and I have quite a different stack here. I tried to really vary it up. I just really thought about books that I would want to tell people about just now. Like they were just sort of what popped into my head as I was putting this video together. So, no ifs, ands, no, it's very organic. So the first book I'm going to tell you about was actually one of the books I read last year for the Spilling Tea Book Club. And it was a book that I had had on my radar for a while. And once I finished it, was devastated that I had not read it earlier. And that is The Street by Ann Petry. This book was originally published in 1946, and I believe it's Anne's only novel. And The Street is the story of Ludi Johnson, and she is a single mother with a young boy who has decided to move out of the house of her father because she does not believe that it has the right influence for her young son. She doesn't want her son to grow up in a certain way, and there's sort of a lack of structure at her father's house. So she decides to find her own apartment to raise her son. And in doing so, she sort of strikes out on this path of independence, and we sort of get to see her and her relationship to the world as a single Black mother trying to make it as so many obstacles are thrown her way. She is strong and she is driven and she is willing to do whatever it takes to take care of her son. We meet many men that come into her life and they all disappoint, and she has to sort of overcome their obstacles in order to continue to provide for her child. This story is utterly heartbreaking, but beautifully told. Ludi is a character you will never, ever forget. It's lyrical in its writing. It's so ripe with a sense of New York. Does that make sense? Like, it takes place in New York and you feel it on so many pages. Ann Petry is a brilliant writer. Was a brilliant writer. She has passed. But it's just so, so good. And I think about Ludi Johnson all the time. So that's The Street by Ann Petry. This is the new version that came out a couple years ago now by Mariner with a fantastic introduction by T.R.E. Jones. I highly recommend it. It is so good. Okay. Now, I can't do one of these videos without talking about Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison is arguably the greatest American writer ever, and she is hands down my favorite author when you look at an entire collective body of work. I absolutely adore her. Now, I didn't want to talk about books that I've sort of talked about ad nauseum. I've talked about Song of Solomon so many times. I've talked about The Bluest Eye so many times. I've talked about Beloved, which I think most people have read. So what I thought I would do is sort of share with you my experience with the very first Toni Morrison book I read, and that was Sula, which I read in college. And I remember finishing this book. I was in a women in literature class in the women's studies department at my university. I was one of 3 men in the class. And I remember finishing this book and being like, oh my gosh, this woman's a genius, and I now need to read everything she has ever written or will ever write. And I was blown away. It started my love affair with Toni Morrison, it really did. Now, Sula is the story of 2 friends, 2 women. We have Nell, who sort of stayed home. You know, she stayed where she grew up, she got married, she had children, and she stayed in that community. And then we have Sula, who left that community, went to college, went to live a life in different cities, and then she has returned home. And what the book focuses upon is their relationship upon Sula's return. And as they sort of interact with each other and their friendship is renegotiated, their choices of what they decided to do with their life. Nell staying home, and Sula, exiting and returning home. They sort of come to terms with the repercussions of those decisions, very different for each of them. I mean, Toni Morrison is brilliant. I don't know what else to tell you. And I remember this book just blowing me away, and I absolutely loved it. So that's Sula by Toni Morrison. I highly recommend it. The next person we're going to talk about is the very, very amazing Colson Whitehead. Now, Colson Whitehead really needs no introduction, but he's really sort of come just out of the gate, blown the world apart, because his last 2 books won the Pulitzer. Like, how does that happen? He won the Pulitzer for The Underground Railroad, and then he won the Pulitzer for The Nickel Boys. And The Nickel Boys is absolutely amazing. I really love The Underground Railroad, but that is not where I started my journey with Colson Whitehead. The very first book I read by him, I read right out of college, because it came out, I want to say, in 1999, was, and I struggle with this title, so help me try to do it, because I always want to change the word. The Intuitionist by Colson Whitehead. This book is utterly brilliant. I need to do a reread, because 1999 was a long time ago. This is the story of an organization of elevator repair people. And we're set in a world where this company or this group that repairs elevators, there are 2 distinct philosophies on how to do that. We have the empiricists, who are the ones that do it by the book. They follow the manual, they go in, that's how they assess damaged elevators. And then we have the other group, which are the intuitionists, who trust their gut. They sort of go by what they see. Our main character is a young Black woman who is the first young Black woman to be hired into this department, and a stout intuitionist. And what happens is there's an elevator mishap on her watch, and it becomes an argument, or sort of like sort of a fight between these 2 different philosophies on how to repair elevators, the empiricists versus the intuitionists. And other things come to forefront, gender and race and issues like that within the organization. And as we sort of stare at this sort of microcosm of a world, what Colson Whitehead does so amazing is you start to see the bigger world in his smaller picture. This book is brilliant. I do believe it is one of I have a friend who will say that this is their favorite book of all time. I'm not going to call them out, because you know how that is, but this book will definitely make you think, and you'll be like, I'm reading a book about elevator repair people. What? It's worth it. That is The Intuitionist by Colson Whitehead, and I highly, highly recommend it. When I met Colson, I met him on tour for the Nickel Boys, I think. I had him sign this copy, because the copy I bought was gone. I had given it away years and years ago. And yeah, that was amazing. Okay, 3 more books, guys. Did I say 5? I have 6. I have 6 recommendations for you. The next book I'm going to tell you about is actually a collection of short stories, and that is A Lucky Man by Jamel Brinkley. This was shortlisted for the National Book Award a couple of years ago. I actually picked it to win because I just thought it does something different. Now, I always struggle to sort of encapsulate short stories in sort of a succinct way to grasp them all. But what I will say is that this is a group of stories that sort of dives into Black male masculinity in a way that I had never read before. I remember finishing the stories and being blown away by the characters and the thought put into the people that Mr. Brinkley was putting on the page. And I just was so amazed at his ability to tell a story in such a short period of time. Yeah, it's hard for me to tell you about it. I don't want to go through each of the stories, but what I will say is this is a book that you can digest. So you read a story, you walk away, you think about it, you really see it, and then you go back and you read another one and you sort of connect it all together. I loved this book. I love the stories, and I think he's a really amazing writer, and I cannot wait to see what he does next. So that's A Lucky Man by Jamel Brinkley, and this one is really good. Sometimes when I do these videos, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna sit here, I'm just gonna open a book, and then I think, oh, I'll just start to read, but I'm recording myself. You guys don't wanna see that. The next book that I'm gonna tell you about actually needs no introduction at all because it is plenty popular, but if you haven't had a chance to read Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson, you really should take the time. Caste is a nonfiction book that discusses the caste system in America and how it has been structured in order to keep Black men and women in the lowest level possible within our United States caste system. What she does is she compares this caste system to the system in India, which is probably known on a broader scale, but when you start to look at it side by side, you start to see the overlap. She also discusses how the caste system in America was studied by the Nazis in Germany as they created the caste system that they were going to use in order to manipulate and basically destroy the Jewish population. I don't know how to say that because it's horrifying. When you read it, you are absolutely blown away. The book is amazingly well researched. It is heartbreaking. It is brilliant. It will make you think about things differently than you have ever thought about them before. I promise you. So take my word for it. Read Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. Then watch her on with Oprah. She had a conversation with Oprah and it was fantastic. I love her. I followed her since her first book, The Warmth of Other Suns, which I absolutely adored as well. So yeah, there's a lot to be said. She's an amazing author. Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. Please read it as soon as possible. Okay, last but not least is the book that just came out in January, and a book that I've already reviewed on my channel, but I want to make sure more of you get your hands on it, and that's The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. I'm not going to say a ton about this one, other than this is the story of a plantation in the South centered around the relationship between 2 young Black slaves. And what we have here is how their relationship in a lot of ways affects the plantation at all different angles. Their fellow slaves, the plantation owners, the women that work in the house, and each other. It is a soft love story between these 2 men and how they just found each other at the right time. But it is heartbreaking, and it is a lot about how misunderstood relationships can be and have been between gay men, gay Black men, for years and years and centuries. Robert Jones Jr. broke my heart. I sobbed at the end of this book, but I was also like really happy that the story had been told. I think it's brilliant, and I really think that you should read it. So that's The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. I do have to say thank you to Putnam because they did send me this copy as a gifted copy, and I utterly love it. I've talked about it forever. Okay, let's see if I can hold these books up without dropping them. You know I'm not always good at this. So if you are looking for a book to read for Black History Month, I have recommended 6 of them to you. Now, you should read these books if you have not, no matter when, because they are all amazing. So, as always, if you are a return subscriber, thank you so much. I could not do this without you. If you are new to my channel, I hope you stick around. I do like to talk about books. I love them so very, very much. As always, I encourage you to read globally, shop locally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye!